and it'll just let me know. Oh, we're being live streamed. Sweet. We're live on the air. I'm here with Iain. Whoops! I clicked the wrong button. Hold on. I need I need one of those people behind the scenes who who does everything, like all the technical stuff, and that way I can. Anyways, all right. I'm here with Iain McLarty, who I met in Germany last year.
Yep.
But we have a lot of mutual friends. The reason we met is Iain was on the worship team, the worship development team for the World Council of Churches meeting last year in Karlsruhe. So he was running about doing lots of official stuff while I was just sitting at some drums waiting to be told what to do. And we got to know each other pretty well. So I wanted to get him on Coffee and Hymns. So he's a conductor living in Glasgow, Scotland. He's from Scotland, as you'll hear as soon as he speaks, which is also another great reason to have him on Coffee.
Well, I didn't think I had an accent. Sorry.
No, sorry, I have an American accent.
Yeah, you have an accent.
Right. Yeah. I forgot about that. So he's a conductor. He's a worship consultant with various places. Most recently, he's worked a good bit with the Wild Goose Resource Group and is an associate member of the Iona community, which we'll talk about in a minute. Let's get started, Iain. Before we get chatting, let's listen to the first song that you shared. This is The Lord of the Earth by John Bell. Anything you want to say to introduce this piece before we listen to it?
Let's just play it. I think it introduces itself.
All right, you got it. Holy schmoly, that was fun.
Yeah, we had fun recording that.
Yeah, sounds like it.
You can probably tell.
Yeah, exactly. You could feel the energy of the group.
Yeah.
Who was playing the little
that's your pal Jane.
Oh yeah,
Jane Bentley.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey Jane, if you watch this, hi Jane. Hello Jane.
I think on that album, Jane is the entire percussion section, so you just have her kind of. There's some pieces where it's Jane 10 times, and that's That's all
Huh.
the percussion on a track, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
We had a fabulous jazz pianist who basically kind of had looked at the melody line and then just went for it. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that was great fun. I think that gave the singers a lot of energy, and that was just kind of responding to actually how the pianist was, yeah, kind of just imagining things as he went. So
Yeah, when the piano started, it almost had like a take five feel. And
yeah,
I almost thought like, are they recording this in five? But then he kind of he straightened out
yeah.
into the six, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things. So this is from the latest Wild Goose album, which I think is out through GIA in the States.
Okay.
And basically, John Bell at some point handed me a massive pile of music like that high and said, "This is all the stuff we've not published yet. Make an album out of it," which was really generous of him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we kind of put a collection together, mostly stuff that he and Gray Moll had written, with a few other pieces pulled from elsewhere. And that was one of them because it hadn't been published in a kind of a collection that was published in the UK. So Wild
Yeah.
Goose self-published in the UK, and then GIA have some of these choral collections, which I think you were saying that's how
Hmm.
it's maybe known in the States.
Yeah. Hmm.
But this song wasn't really that widely used in the UK. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to get it out there. And there's always that tension in these recordings that it's aimed at congregations. So it's how do you get stuff which is songs which are really singable by congregations, but when you're making an album, it's not really that interesting to listen to multiple times if it's done the way it would be done on a Sunday morning.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you're trying to find that balance. Can you bring in some, some really good musicians who can bring it to life, can make it interesting to listen to on repeat, but
Yeah.
there's still a core there, which is really the singers who are
Yeah.
singing the way a congregation would sing. And I
Right.
think that's a really kind of core part of what Wild Goose have always tried to do with their
Yeah.
recordings, at least, and all their resources. So
That's like it's one of the hardest things to do, I think, in modern congregational song. Yeah, getting those recordings done in a way that is still congregationally friendly but interesting to listen to is it's really really hard. And what happens a lot is the congregational aspects of it get sacrificed even to the point where the key of the piece
yeah,
is changed so that the singer sounds their best, but that it's in a very uncongregationally friendly key.
yeah,
Chris Tomlin is like notorious for this, right? Like it'll be like up a fourth, because he's a high tenor. But then it's really hard to sing in that key, and everyone's having to transpose it away from the recorded version, and it gets so messed up.
yeah.
So I've always appreciated that.
We're working in the Church of Scotland at the moment on a supplement to our hymn book, and that's one of the things our music subgroup keep coming back to is almost kind of like asking for permission sometimes, like what key is this normally done on? And a lot of the time, if it's worship songs, the charts are taken off Song Select on CCLI,
Yep.
and it's it's a transcription that's based on a recording, so it's both that the key is for the performance rather than the congregation, and then it doesn't just present it in a simple format of
Yeah.
a standardized chorus verse bridge, but has the kind of here's variation A on the chorus, here's variation B, which
Right.
is just these subtle differences, but it makes it look really unapproachable for people who don't know the song already.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, almost we're kind of giving our committee permission to kind of go, no, let's, if we shift it a fourth, that's absolutely fine if that makes it work for a congregation. Like, it still has to feel like, it has integrity with the song. Like, if the chorus has to feel like it's lifted high in the voice, you still have
Yep.
to feel like you're singing in that place. But for some people, that might be between a congregation, that might be a kind of G to D range rather than being a D to A range or something like that. Yeah, but I think that's for Wild Goose never been so much of an issue. It's always kind of published with congregational singing in mind.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So you're not drinking coffee,
No.
which is okay.
Yeah.
Like I think a majority of the world drinks something else other than coffee, and that would be tea.
And then we discussed that I'm drinking fake tea, so it's
Yeah,
rooibos.
it's not even really tea. But he's drinking rooibos, which is a South African. It's called Red Bush, from South Africa or in that area of the world, and it's not actually in the tea family. It's an herb, so it's naturally decaffeinated. So if you're avoiding caffeine but you want tea-like substance, rooibos is your go-to, and it's really my favorite. I like it with vanilla, but you have something else in it.
I have elderflower in this one because I spent a bit of time
Elderflower.
in Denmark, and that's a flavor that's everywhere there, and I love that. So, um,
So we can
yeah,
call this episode "Coffee, Rooibos, and Hymns."
I did consider, given that it's after lunchtime here, whether I should shift onto whiskey straight away, but give an authentic Scottish feel to it.
That's
But I
right.
thought that was a step too far.
Hey, if it's in the afternoon, you do you. It's only 9 here, so and this is my work, so I should
We do
probably
sometimes
not.
talk about breakfast whiskies, what's the suitable one for starting the day, but yeah,
This pairs nicely with blood sausage.
yeah.
All right.
Good that you've got all the culinary stuff from Scotland down there.
Yeah. Oh, hey, hey, and I'm gonna be there soon. I'm gonna say hi to you if you're in town. I'm gonna be in Glasgow for three
Definitely.
days in August during my sabbatical. All right. So what did you bring next? What's next to listen to?
The next one I think was at the Garden of the World. We're going
Garden
for
of the
next.
World. Okay. Cool.
Um,
Tell us about this
so
one.
I came across this a few years ago. I can't remember how I came across it, but so it's focused on kind of climate change, climate justice, and aside from church stuff, that's been a big thing for me. I'm involved in kind of climate campaigning and activism, and so I'm always really interested in how we bring that into the church and how it's been done in
Hmm.
congregational song.
Hmm.
And there's been some really interesting projects, maybe the last 2-3 years doing that. I know in the UK, Resound Worship, who I think you've met some of them before, had this doxicology project, which has done a
Hmm.
lot of really great songs across from celebration of God the Creator to lament and everything in between. I think Porter's Gate had something out recently as well, and so there's a few things. But
Yeah.
this one's Shirley Rayna Murray, and
Oh,
um, I
she's my
I just
favorite.
yeah, and I'm actually looking back at some hymn books. She's been writing, or she was writing about this way before it was not just an issue in the church, but an issue that was talked about in wider society. So I was looking at
Exactly.
the copyright date on "Touch the Earth Lightly," which is 1992.
Yeah, early
Um,
90s, right? No one's
and
talking
so
about it.
and not just so it's not just that she was actually writing about this, but some of the way she was writing, I think she was um, she was where some of the theology has got to now, but
Yeah.
doing that 25 years ago. So it was, although there might have been mentions of things like stewardship or anything, but nourishment and greening and all these things,
Yep.
and the kind of unity of people and planet. A lot of stuff which has been a theological journey for a lot of people between like the last 10, 15 years. She was
Hmm.
already where a lot of us are now 25 years ago. So yeah, Touch the Earth Lightly, Where the Voices for the Earth is another one she wrote in the late
Hmm.
90s.
Hmm.
Um, which again, kind of that, even writing a hymn with that as a title, that
Right, right.
question in the late 90s. And I mean, I was just out of primary school then, so I don't know don't know how people were reacting to that at that point, whether it was widely sung, whether it was seen as this fringe thing. I
Hmm.
honestly don't know, but I can't imagine it was seen as the sort of mainstream where now, as I said earlier, like we're working on a Henry supplement, and that's of course going to be a massive section of it, is including lots of songs which actually are touching on creation, on climate justice, because it's such a contemporary issue.
Yeah.
um, but the Garden of the World more recent one, I think it's about 2015, and set to music by Sui
Hmm.
Hong Lim, who we were both working with in WCC as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think just a fabulous combination of words and lyrics, and some of the journey through the song is really
Hmm.
powerful. So starting with the Garden of the World, almost kind of setting us in that kind of Genesis
Yeah.
place, but going through the new prophets and thinking how does that connect of Greta and climate activists around the world, young people, how often do we kind of get that sort of thing highlighted in congregational song?
Mm-hmm.
Both in my so I do worship development work with the Church of Scotland, and specifically with congregations in the poorest communities. Been very involved in things like WCC and Iona, who have a strong bias towards kind of working with the most marginalised communities.
Mm-hmm.
But that's often another struggle in congregational song, is kind of that representation. And so that third verse actually really recognising that it's those who are marginalised, who are poor, who are most impacted by climate change.
Mm-hmm.
But the key thing that I always come back to, what's the Christian response to this as an issue? Because so I did a reflection once in the church and was using as a starting point, it was the setting two things alongside each other. It was the new heaven and a new earth passage. And then putting that alongside this, I don't know if it's in the States as much, but a placard you see at a lot of climate marches is "There is no planet B." Oh. And so it's setting those two things alongside. How can we as Christians say there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, but at the same time be saying there's no planet B? So how do you reconcile those? And it's the kind of hope and seeing that we're co-creators of a better world that for me is the way that we do that. And I think this last verse, we pray for one more chance to tend to earth's repair. The greening of all life is dying in our care. Like it's our care that's important here, and we can pray for that other chance. Mm-hmm. And having that hope is such a key part of the Christian response to this issue. So I just think this hymn so beautifully takes us through so many of the really important issues. And as I say, it's a wonderful combination of a text from a writer who has been doing this, thinking about this, was thinking about it for 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. And Sui Hong's music, I think, just really captures a beautiful place to sing it. So yeah.
So I recorded a basic accompaniment for this. I listened to our recording from the World Council of Churches and how Sui Hong asked us to do it. So he had a choir hum the kind of whole notes and half notes in the accompaniment, and then he had a flute just double the melody. Very simple. So I'll sing it with this recording that I did with just a simple kind of choir from my keyboard with a little fluty flute on top. So this is not an official recording of the piece. This is just Brian's rendering of it for Coffee and Hymns this morning. So feel free to sing along at home. So you should be able to see the words there. The garden of the world, the paradise we share, the greening of all life is lying in our care. The covenants we made are rendered null and void. The garden that is God's is honored and destroyed. New prophets tell the signs of fire, flood, and storm. Now all creation groans as nature changes form, and yet we will not change, though ice floes melt away, though creatures lose their homes in desolation's day. The poor and the displaced must struggle more than all, when hope and darkness fail, when drought has taken toll, when air is warmth and breath, when water does not flow. First children bear the cost, first planting cannot grow. The callous face of greed, the trading of the powers, will fuel and will feed a lifestyle such as ours. We pray for one more chance to to tend to earth's repair, the greening of on high is dying in our care.
I was just reflecting as you were singing there that verse about the what was it, the callous face of greed.
Yeah.
And thinking back to the first song as well, with its forgo comfort and privilege and self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
and two writers there, in Shirley Murray and John Bell, who have really put that sort of thing into congregational song, but something that, although it's there throughout, particularly the Gospels, throughout all of Scripture, but particularly the Gospels, if you were to think, what proportion of congregational song features it to what proportion of the Gospels features it, it's much, much smaller.
The proportions are off.
Just slightly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's, probably a common theme between both of those, and why they speak to me a lot, and why I think they're important songs for us to sing. That kind of really bringing that social justice dimension, not seeing it as a kind of fad or a theme over time, and how often we actually address money and greed is a real challenge. Like, we do it in terms of maybe songs about stewardship or about offering, but actually, having it as part of our congregational song is so important.
Yeah, wow. And the melody is such a nice pairing with that text.
Yeah.
Sui Hong is really a master at text tune pairings. Not only writing them, but also just identifying them, and he's great.
When you see the whole range of writers that he's written for, and then the kind of variety of musical styles, I think that's the thing that I come back to, and just see, no two are ever exactly the same. They're really kind of, it's always a conversation between the music and the text, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's and he talks about hybridity in musical styles, and the reality of the 21st century church when it comes to songs and music making, that there is no purity because of the legacy of colonialism and the realities of globalism, that everything is a hybrid in some way, and everyone is coming up with their own new styles based on old styles, or and it's all mishmashed, which is, and he would make the case, I think, that that's beautiful, right? And that we have to accept it as it is. And I think his writing shows that hybridity just all over the place. It's pulling from all sorts of sources and places, and
and then it's
always in service to the text.
And there's different dynamics with him saying that to either of us saying it, though, as a kind of white Westerner kind of affluent, privileged kind of background. So I think that's another reason why I always want to highlight songs like that, is actually, the authentic writing from that perspective. I think that's such a challenge. And I mean, going back to the first song again, I mean, words inspired by Oscar Romero, and of course you want to kind of hint at that, but it's such a difficult balance to kind of hint at where that comes from without becoming kind of pastiche of Latin American music or appropriation. And it's not for me to say where the balance lies or who's got it right, but I think you just need to be so aware of that as an issue. And I know that, I mean, in my context, but I think globally, like, Wild Goose and Iona Community have been such an important player in sharing global song, which even as a term is problematic in its own ways. But I think we're starting to have a conversation around that now. Like, what's our place in that? What are the things that we need to learn going forward? And it's, same as I know Hymn Society have had that conversation over a long time, and so it's such a challenging area, but really grateful for people like Sui Hong who can support that type of conversation really well, and are
willing to.
It
takes a lot of energy on their
part. I mean, I think that was the thing that I came away slightly with my mind being blown into a million places from WCC was that mishmash of people from all over the world and these conversations coming together. And you're kind of left not with one coherent view of where you go with this stuff anymore, because it's all been it's all been torn apart. Not in an unconstructive way, but just that your mind is being open to so many different perspectives, and that there's not even one answer to any of this.
Exactly. Like, it's blown apart in the best way, in the best way possible. Like it when it's working well. And I think in the worship services at the WCC this past year, it seems like the feedback in my experience was that it most often did work well. But it worked well because God's grace was at work in how everyone was just trying their damnedest to navigate all of the power structures at play, the racial colonial power structures at play, the church hierarchy power structures at play from all the different traditions, all of that all at once, the language barriers, all of that, and yet somehow we still worshiped together, and it was at times messy, at times beautiful and perfect, at times, and structured, at times spontaneous. Only God's grace at work in God's people could make that work. There's no other way to describe it, because otherwise it just would have been a total cluster.
And you can only make it work where the people coming together have an awareness that that's what's you're trusting in as well. If there's too many people pushing into, wanting to play those power dynamics and everything, that can
that happens sometimes, right? There were these times where there were too many cooks in the kitchen, and there, things, it got tough at times. It was hard work. It was hard work. Luckily, I wasn't on the team. I was just one of the instrumentalists, so I got to just kind of just fade into the background and drink some coffee while that happened.
That was where the whiskey came out later, if it had been a tough day. That's right. Or whatever the local German spirit was.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're coming up at the end of our time. So I want to thank you, first of all, for jumping on. Although you didn't have to get up early for this, I've had some folks on the other side of time zones from me that have had quite early mornings because of this, but it's already afternoon for you. But still, thank you. You took the time out to say hi to me and to jump on this broadcast with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So what's our last song that we're gonna close with?
So a song from now, it's been difficult to pin down exactly. I think it is really South Sudan. Originally kind of Sudan, I guess, before the split in the countries, called Murasala. And I came across this not at the last WCC assembly, but at the mission conference in Tanzania before that. And I mean, it kind of neatly ties on from the conversation we were just having, because I think one of the big questions, which maybe the last 5-6 years I've been really becoming aware of, is that question of what songs we sing in Europe and North America from other parts of the world. And that because it's now been that we've been singing songs from, particularly in the UK, at least it was starting with South African protest songs, if you go back to the 80s and stuff, those songs at that point were current in South Africa, but for many of them, they're no longer songs that are sung in the original context, but they're still songs which churches here are singing and see that as singing in solidarity with people in South Africa. But would people in South Africa see that because it's no longer, they're no longer songs they sing? And so I think that's one of the real challenges now, that we have such a rich kind of ecumenical repertoire of songs from all over the world, is that there's almost a repertoire which has become ecumenical and accepted, and people in different countries have their own kind of subset of that repertoire. But it's how we actually also let that repertoire move and evolve over time. And so for me, Murasala is a wonderful example of a song which I came across through a WCC book. I came across through, we did it in Tanzania in the World Mission Conference. I think we repeated it again in Karlsruhe in Germany. but also there's quite a lot of links between Scotland and South Sudan at the moment. There's some projects where a mediation organisation I'm involved in here have been training up people from churches in South Sudan to be kind of peacemakers in that context. There's some other strong Church of Scotland links. So the Church of Scotland moderator, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Pope did a visit to South Sudan recently. And every time I talk to people, either folk from South Sudan or folk who've been meeting folk from South Sudan, they always say, oh, they were singing these songs. And I say, what ones? And Murasala is always up the top of that list.
Nice.
I came across it myself, and we had some folk across, and that was a song which they were singing to us, and I got them to record it for me, give them me their version of all the verses, because there's always variety.
Always, yeah.
But what I love about it as a song is it's one we know is current and is loved by people there, and they want to share it now. And so I just think, as you know, if we're wanting to do this repertoire with integrity, then this is a great example of a song which we can be singing in our churches now, and which connects, of course, with a part of the world that we want to be praying about, we wanting to be singing in solidarity with.
Yep.
It's in Juba Arabic, which is maybe a language which is not quite as obvious as, you know, Swahili or some of the South African languages on first sight, but it's really simple. Once you see a transliteration and once you hear it done once. When I teach it, I would always teach it by saying it in rhythm and getting people to repeat it back and get a feel for the rhythm spoken. And they pick it up so quickly. Just repeat Mura Salah, Nina Kulu Mura Salah, just repeating that a few times. And once they've, 30 seconds and they have it, because the notes are so easy, the harmonizations are so easy, like just get the feel for that and people have the song, and it has so much life, and it's a wonderful sending song. It means we're ambassadors of Christ, we're ambassadors of Jesus, actually also not lyrics that we get maybe quite so explicitly sometimes.
Right.
And I'm not really aware of, I think I know one attempt at trying to do English words for this, which I'm not completely convinced quite get the feel for it, but I think the text is simple enough. It's one that people can sing in the original language, and it really, really works and comes to life.
For English-speaking congregations, for a song like this, I actually think a singing translation isn't helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe a direct translation to the side, right? This is what it means, quite literally. Yeah. But you can't sing that text. Just sing the original text, like you said. You can learn it in 30 seconds. And it's worth learning. It's worth taking the time to do that for various reasons. So I actually kind of glad you haven't found a good English translation of it. It's a singing translation.
I made a go myself at one point as well, and it's just, there's nothing which quite gets the flavor of it in the same way. Like, you've got that feeling of, we've talked already about how words and music link, and so
maybe that's just God saying, we don't need that.
Yeah, it might be. Absolutely.
All right, so this is the recording from the World Council of Churches. I think like the 6th day or the 5th day. It was we're kind of in the middle but near the end of our time together. And who's leading this song? Is
it Simon?
Yeah, Simon. Simon is leading this. He's not from South Sudan.
No, a Namibian leading a song from South Sudan.
Exactly, Namibian. It was the closest geographic place from one of our leaders.
I think we also had someone in the team from Egypt, and so they were able to work together, and they both knew kind of different perspectives on it. So, yeah. Right.
Yeah. I don't know if he's in the sound booth for this one, or he might be up on the bass. He kind of floated around, played different instruments, our Egyptian friend. But anyways, I hope you enjoy. Thanks for being here. And after this song, then we'll end our broadcast. All right, so enjoy Murasala.